ground. Reverend Jackson had covered so much ground with his base for so long, it didn't give them the space, Pastor Thurston. Didn't give him the space. Didn't hurt to have Minister Farrakhan saying, if you heard him, the last you got Malcolm, you got Medgar, you got Martin, he'll be the last one you heard. Because at that time, and many of you are not living, and those of you who were would remember how tense that time was. The fear was that, like other black leaders, he would be killed very young and that he wouldn't get through the campaign. Thank heavens he did get through it. But we're going to talk about this APAC using $100 million, Pastor Thurston, $100 million to target progressives. And in some cases, it might work, but it's on you. So call me at 773-763-9278. And a devastating blow to voting rights. Going to have Daryl Jones to specifically share with us what happened. Our civil rights organizations, our advocacy organizations, you as an individual will not be able to file a lawsuit. Only the DOJ, U.S. DOJ, can bring lawsuits under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. That is devastating, everybody. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show channel. My apologies to my morning stars. It took me a minute to get up this morning. That was on me. And Alex and I are intending on bringing you a great show. So today, $100 million that APAC has put into a fund to defeat the Squad, AOC, Omar, Bush, Bowman, Tlaib, Presley, and others, and voting rights. Did you know that medical services are no longer available in northern Gaza? That's right, their Indonesian hospital was done so much damage by the IDF that now those who are in northern Gaza have no hospital. Oh my goodness. And in another post, I found this out, Pastor Thurston. Uh, there is a website and a social media platform in which Israel's public broadcaster, they published a song featuring a group of children promising, quote, to annihilate everyone in Gaza. They have the children singing this now. Friendship Song 2023. It's been since removed, but some of the lyrics go like this: in another year, there will be nothing there, and we will safely return to our home. Within a year, we will annihilate everyone, and they will return to plow, and then we will return to plow our fields. That's the nature of that struggle over there. That's why we need peace. We need a ceasefire. Hamas said that they are close to reaching a truce with Israel. This group that is responsible for the tragedy of October 7th said today that Hamas would return hostages in exchange for Israel's release of jailed Palestinians in a deal. Israel has not commented. We will see what will happen. Certainly praying for everyone to get on out. A federal court moved to limit endorsement of the Voting Rights Act. That's one of the headlines. The future of OpenAI was thrown into chaos yesterday. Nearly all employees of the AI company at Microsoft threatened to quit and join former CEO Sam Altman at Microsoft. Excuse me, not at Microsoft, but what do you think about that? OpenAI. Yeah, well, he's the one who said in an interview this past summer that no one person should be in charge of that space. It is too precious and it is too dangerous to vest it in the hands of one person. Good for him. We will see. Boy, for those of you who are traveling in this holiday season, I don't know if you are, Pastor Thurston, but they say a big storm could disrupt travel in the eastern U.S. Heavy rain from the Tennessee Valley to the mid-Atlantic could slow air and ground transportation today and tomorrow. 27 million people are supposed to be traveling today. Wow. Please call your airline or the train and find out what's going on, everybody. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 42 degrees. There will be rain. Minneapolis, 42 degrees, rain and clouds. In the NFL, last night, Monday Night Football, the Eagles 21, Kansas City 17. In the NBA, the Timberwolves 117, the Knicks 100, the Heat 118, the Bulls 100, and the NHL had a night off. Pastor Stephen Thurston, how you doing? All right, all right, all right. You tell me. I'm going to mute my microphone so that I can download a few stories for you. But you tell me, what is the good news today? First, how can we worship with you? And what is the good news? I need some. Mm. 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 Mhm.
way, but over time, these activities can feel like a welcome distraction or space where you feel connected to yourself again. For me, Santita, it's playing Pac-Man. So I got a Miss Pac-Man machine in my house. And even in those moments when I'm down a little bit and I know I've got a lot of work to do, I'll carve out some time, turn on the Miss Pac-Man machine, and see if I can beat my previous high score. And you may be saying, well, Stephen, this flow thing, that sounds new to me. So how exactly does it work? Great question. Glad you asked. Number one, choose something challenging enough to require focus without being frustrating. Number two, block out time and treat the activity like an appointment with yourself that you can't miss. And then number three, now on your hard days, your brain will do a great job of convincing you that nothing can be fun. My challenge is that you start. Maybe just set a time of 10 minutes. And once it sounds off, you might want to keep going if you're enjoying it that much. But if the day is very hard and you just can't even keep that appointment with yourself, it's all right. It's cool. Set it to the side and try again another day. In any moment of joy, in any moment, joy really can coexist with grief or sorrow, and laughter can share space with pain. I want us to know that. And there's nothing wrong with you if your days are still feeling tough. You're not a burden to people. You're a human being. Setting the expectation that some days will be hard and others will be easier, that you can hold struggle in one hand and joy in the other. Listen, that can help you to better navigate the loss and the hardship that life sends our way sometimes. So the good news is today, grief, joy, pain, struggle, it can all coexist. And it's my prayer, it's my hope that you learn to hold both in your hand and navigate life as life actually gives us both throughout each and every day. Listen, have an amazing Thanksgiving.
One quick question for you. Maybe it's not this quick. I got about 3 minutes left in the segment. You
Yeah,
know, this is a time of year where people really they feel extreme joy or extreme sadness. More often than not, the suicide rates go up and all of that at this time because
yes,
people feel the gaps in their lives that they're able to
yes,
fill in this week, 2 week period, for Christmas that you have off. Some people just find it to be too much. But also sometimes some of the closest people to us are toxic, Pastor Thurston.
yes.
And
Preach.
and I remember one Thanksgiving. Oh, I was early in college, and my brother uh, Jonathan, Congressman Jackson, was about to come out of high school, and I saw him come off of the kitchen phone, and he was distraught. And so he told me that his friend had been killed that morning. So of course,
Mm,
he went to tell our parents, and they went over to he was a boy. He was in high school. His stepfather became upset with him because he didn't move the trash quickly enough. Just something awful. And
yeah.
I just want to know, is there a time when your family and the people closest to you are so toxic that you might not need to be around them during this holiday season? 90 seconds, you go.
Listen, just because it's tradition doesn't mean that we need to stick to it. If you feel your energy shift, because we're all energy and energy's around us, and we have the ability to change our climate. And if your climate is dark and dreary and depressing when you're around certain people's energy, you've got the right and actually the responsibility to change the climate, to shift your space. Because here's the reality, we can't control what people say or what people do, but we can control their access to us. And maybe this Thanksgiving, you need to sit it out. Maybe you need to stay at home. Maybe you need to go and hang out with another group of friends, or find some person in a facility, a old folks home as they call them,
Yeah, yeah.
and just make a new friend, make a new connection, and find a new energy field that just feels better, that gives you joy and inspiration and enlightens you, rather than just doing it just because we share the same last name and I've always hung around you on Thanksgiving. Make a
Amen.
shift.
Amen. Amen. I love it. How can we worship with you? You'll be having services on Thanksgiving Day very quickly.
Thanksgiving morning, 10 to 11, New Covenant Missionary Baptist Church. Catch us on all our social media platforms or on our website, and you can stream it or pull up to 77th and Cottage Grove here in Chicago on the South Side.
Amen. And on Friday, will you be doing your Facebook Live?
I'm taking this Friday off. I'll be back next Friday.
All right. Love you, Pastor Stephen Thurston, everybody. Let's
Love
talk
you
about
too.
what happened with voting rights, everybody. Our civil rights organizations, our advocacy organizations will no longer be able to bring lawsuits against discriminatory election practices. What does that mean? And then AIPAC, $100 million to take out AOC, Ilhan Omar, Chloe Bush, Rashida Tlaib, and the squad. Back in just a minute. Call us. Thank you, Pastor.
The pastor left.
Okay, well, thank you. Oh boy, I was scrambling today. But I'm glad I was able to ask him that question, because some people, sometimes you don't need to go home for the holiday. Hey, I love everybody, y'all. But the Bible tells you to do that. You're supposed to love everybody, but doesn't say anything about liking. And sometimes you need to get away from people. Hey, he said, Nausi, how you doing, sweetie? And Deborah and Barbara Bacon and Jewel. That's right. All my morning stars up here. Everybody like and share. You know what's been happening with me as my politics became known to the social media platforms, specifically Facebook. Well, all of them. People get late notifications about the show. Isn't that interesting? So would you please, morning stars, let people know that the show is on live from 6 to 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. And please like and share, because they're getting messages that the show begins once it's over. Isn't that interesting? We had gone from
Attorney Conley's on.
Couple million people a week and northward, and then boom, it crashed. So I want you all, please, 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 to like and share the show, and tell people about it, okay? All right, let's talk about voting rights. Attorney Jones, who do I have with me right now? Hello. Ooh. Who's there?
Good morning, Santita. Erin Connolly is on.
Hey, sweetie. You know what? I'm going to go through this voting piece very quickly because I want to go right into AIPAC. Yep. Nina Turner agreed to be on the show at 7. Now, so I want you all to weigh in on that. Obviously, I'm going to really be talking to her, but if I will invite you to jump in for sure. Okay. But I'm going to
well, she has some experience.
Attorney Jones is on.
Attorney Jones.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, sweetie. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Aaron, and your family, and you and yours, Attorney Darrell Jones. Although Attorney Jones is not married, he did let me know that when I actually sent him the wrong text one day. He said, I know that wasn't meant for me. Oh, I'm not mad at you. That having been said, I want you, Attorney Jones, to describe what happened with this federal appeals court decision yesterday with respect to voting rights. If you give it to me in about 5 to 7 minutes, because I want to pivot real hard to AIPAC and this $100 million fund that they have, that they're going to spend to unseat the progressives in the U.S. House of Representatives. Okay. Okay. So I just need you to describe that, and we'll get into that after the holiday, because I think we need to drill down on that, particularly we're trying to get people registered to vote. But I really wanted you and Aaron to talk about it. But when Nina Turner accepted the invitation late last night, Nina and I are girls, so I call her or reach out to her, and then when she gets back to me, she does, because she's really, really busy. She's got a lot going on. So that having been said, she did let me know that she can join us at 7, because this is what happened to her in her campaign. AIPAC came after her hard, but AIPAC came after, and the Jewish Defense League and all these right wingers from the Jewish community came after Reverend. And that's, but when you listen to our group from yesterday, this community that we have that continues to expand, don't put all Jewish people in that. Because I met a Carolyn Kasdan during the campaign who stayed on our staff for years and years and years and years. And for no money. You weren't getting paid much to work on the Jackson campaign. We had to raise money just as we went. and she's not with it.
10
But
seconds.
that right-wing element is. Dwight McKee, how you doing? Robert Patillo?
Stand by.
Fine. How you doing, Robert?
Stand by, everybody. Quiet. We're coming up.
I'm great. How are you?
Change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. What about $100 million that AIPAC is going to use to unseat progressive Democrats? What is up with that? But first, there was a groundbreaking decision made yesterday as we welcome, of course, Dr. D. Dwight McKee to the show, brilliant social scientist and the dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project here in Chicago, and attorney Aaron Connolly, brilliant political organizer and strategist, and attorney Robert Patillo, national leadership team of Rainbow Push, and he is also the host of his own show on WAOK every Sunday. But Daryl Jones, along with attorney Barbara Arnwine. Indeed, she is the giant in the Voting Rights Act space. There's no one who has done more, she's our go-to person, and so is the chairman of her organization, the Transformative Justice Coalition, Attorney Daryl Jones. People have been asking about you, Attorney Daryl Jones, so let me get right to this before we pivot to AIPAC. This federal appeals court yesterday ruled that only the DOJ, the U.S. Department of Justice, can bring lawsuits under Section 2 of the 65 Voting Rights Act. And if this decision is upheld, the private citizens can't sue, advocacy groups cannot sue. Who are private citizens? What happened with this decision? And I mean, does that prevent the NAACP? Does that mean they can't sue? Push can't sue? Transformative Justice Coalition can't sue? I've given you a lot, but give it to us.
Good morning, Santita, and you're exactly on point. That's exactly what this decision would mean, is that the NAACP, who is actually the plaintiff in this case that brought this case that came out of Arkansas, it is the entity that has brought this matter. So let me back up real quick, right? This case deals with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, in essence, what we are saying there is that a state or federal entity cannot enact a map, right? The redistricting, the drawing of lines for congressional districts and state districts that would result in a citizen's right to vote based on race or color being denied or bridged. That's what Section 2 is all about. What the federal court did in Arkansas is that it looked at Section 2 and this action that was brought by the NAACP for the state conference of Arkansas and said, you know what, it's clear that these lines are drawn to dilute, as we call it, crack and stack Black votes in these districts to preserve white control over the state of Arkansas, dilute the power of the Black vote in Arkansas. But we're not going to get to the merits of this case because we're finding that the plaintiffs in this case don't have standing. They don't have the right to bring the suit, that it can only be brought by the Department of Justice. What that would actually mean in practice is that individual voters would not have a right to use the courts to address the grievances against them. Let's understand this clearly, right? Because these state lines are being drawn by state legislators. And so the state legislatures that are drawing the lines in these primarily Republican areas are diluting the Black vote to continue to have their control over the legislature, over the Congress. So it affects both the state and federal level. So what this case represents is saying that only the Department of Justice would be the entity that could bring cases. What does that mean in practice? Let's lay it out. In the last 40 years of litigation, there have been some 182 Section 2 cases that have been brought, 182 Section 2 cases. Of those 182 cases, less than 10% have been brought by the Department of Justice. Less than 10%. So it in essence would be the erosion of all the protection of the Voting Rights Act that exists. That's what this case represents. Barbara and I were talking about it last night, and we'll be in Arkansas when it's going to be argued. We're going to be down there protesting this case. One of the big things to understand about Arkansas, I think, is this. In the Eighth Circuit, the appellate judges that are there that are hearing this case, 9 of 11 of them are Republicans. The majority of them have been appointed by very conservative presidents. This is what you have in place there. So, it is, of great importance that we get down there, that we fight to preserve the Voting Rights Act and the ability of the individual American to use the courts to address grievances that have been brought against them by state governments. Santita, I want to close it a little bit on this, right? This case, more than any other case that's come before the courts, this case more than the case that we talked about out of Alabama, this case more than any other case underscores the importance and the reason that we need to pass the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act right now, because none of this nonsense would be going on. This is what this case is all about, Santita. It affects Minnesota, Missouri, Iowa, Arkansas. All those cases right down there now that are in that Eighth Circuit are affected by this. It'll come before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will have to make a decision. But let's note this, in the Supreme Court decision, that Justices Thomas and as well as Justice Gorsuch has already indicated that they don't think that private citizens should have the right to bring challenges under the Voting Rights Act. So it's going to be interesting to see this play out. But more importantly, this is one of our Edmund Pettus Bridge moments, and we need to be certain that we're standing there to be certain that voting rights are protected for every American, but particularly African American and Native Americans and other members of the community of color, Cynthia.
We're going to be following the story. And after the Thanksgiving holiday, we will be digging down on this because this is really, really big. That, hey, I don't want to put it this, well, that's what the NAACP does. We have a grassroots arm of the civil rights movement, civil rights, the rights that we have, that we as citizens have. And that's what NAACP does. That's what Transformative Justice Coalition, that's what they do. And then you have friends of the court like Rego Push, National Action Network, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, but you can't sue now. And that neither can they. Dangerous. Let's talk about this $100 million. This $100 million that AIPAC is expecting to spend to get rid of Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Summer Lee, all these folks. And indeed, we'll be talking with Nina Turner at the top of the hour so she can talk about what happened to her. Boy, we've seen this before. We'll see. But let me start with, of course, we've got Attorney Aaron Connolly. I have you, Attorney Darrell Jones, Dwight McKee. Let me start with you, Robert Patillo. What about this $100 million that they plan to spend?
Well, yeah, I think this is part of us understanding the outside influence that Israel has over American politics. The Jewish population in Congress is almost 3 times what it is in the general public. In the United States, they're about 2% of the U.S. population, somewhere around 6 to 8% of the congressional representatives. We have a Jewish Supreme Court justice. We have many people, and this is not to say that there's an issue with that, but the point is that when you're looking at the power of AIPAC, what they've done is get behind candidates to make sure that the interest of Israel are always going to be paramount. This is bipartisan. This is Democrat, Republican. This is state, local, national, and and when it's great for them to advocate for the needs of the Jewish community. It's great the work that many groups do. It's great for them to defend Israel. I'm not mad at anybody for supporting their own interests, but then when they use that offensively in order to shutter the voices of other groups, that's when it becomes an issue. So someone like was censured by Congress for speaking up for her people, the Palestinian people. Meanwhile, someone like George Santos, who's a literal criminal, has not been censured by Congress. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, many of these people who were insurrectionists on January 6th have not been censured by Congress. And this is a scary place that we end up being, because we do not want foreign influences or foreign actors having this type of an influence over U.S. policy, particularly when you're talking about the hundreds of billions of dollars that the United States has donated over the course of the last 75 years to Israel. We have to start asking, is this because it's in the sincere national security interest of the United States of America, or because outside interest groups have an outsized influence over our politics? And when they start being able to simply flood money into campaigns, pick the representatives, they are essentially picking the U.S. policy and the way the U.S. taxpayers are spending their money. And that is something that has to be brought forward. And this is part of the need for real, true, and lasting campaign finance reform that will survive the Supreme Court, that will regulate not just corporate giving, but also outside giving, to let people know. I would love for these Congress people to have to do just like NASCAR, wear a jacket that says who's actually sponsoring you, who's paying for you to be on the track right now, because I think that would at least give people some truth and accuracy. And when they go into the polls, let's say you want to vote for the APEC sponsored candidate, that is fine. But that should be very well known to the public. And that's the position we are right now, where we do not know who's actually being sincerely an advocate for the people and who's being an advocate for the people paying their ticket to be there.
Call us at 86. No. Another number. This is what happens when you're on the air every day, just about. Attorney Patillo. Call us at 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT, and let us talk about this. Your thoughts, Attorney Erin Connolly.
Well, good morning, everyone. This 100 million, I think, is a low number. First, I'll say that. I think that's a nice round number put out into the press to scare other folks who may be thinking about stepping up and joining this very important call for a humanitarian ceasefire in the Middle East right now. And I think what we've seen the influence, and your guest Nina Turner can speak to her extensive personal experience in the primary portion of our electoral system, and the influence that this type of money has. And what this does at this stage is designed to either encourage folks who are thinking about jumping in and being that candidate who primaries one of these representatives or somebody who's on the fence. And then this money does have a real impact. And to Robert's point, this has been happening on every side in every race since Citizens United, gutted our system. What people are recognizing now is more than ever, and we see this in poll numbers, we see this in engagement with our electorate, especially younger voters. We're paying more attention. The things that were brushed under the rug before are now coming more and more into the open. And we see people doing deeper research, having bigger understanding of how our system works. And while, yes, I would say the average voter who maybe doesn't pay too much attention and shows up on election day for a general election, but these are primary voters, okay, which is a different type of voter that shows up. And for that type of race, I think, we see these called, quote unquote, squad members, but I think it's a broader progressive coalition that's really gaining ground in this country for a genuine movement. And we've seen that in the last few elections. So I think the squad label is a little convenient to undermine the real chops that this group has.
It has negative connotations, right? Not the group. I mean, they don't call no labels and Republican groups squad or police group, stuff like that. No disrespect to the police, because I'm against corruption anywhere, but I support the police, and because I know so many. First of all, I support law and order. I just don't want the law to. I want you to have my back, not be on it. How about that?
Amen.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your thought?
I think this money is concerning, but I think it can be combated, right? We look at someone like Cori Bush, we look at a race like Summerlee in Pennsylvania. These will be primary voters. I think the education piece on the Democratic side starts now, but with the way some of these national polls are going, I think they need to think long and hard about which races they're making this big investment in, and how the electorate in that district is able to discern who sent you, right? If there's a clear understanding in this messaging of what's being attacked, I think the voters are getting smarter and smarter. At the same time, though, this is a lot of money. And at the end of races, when it's tight, and especially in a race like Nina Turner's we saw in Ohio, the timing of this money and where it goes on television, with mailers, with mostly negative storylines. That's the goal of this type of money. And we need absolutely more transparency, but it'll be our job, and it'll be the job of organizers and volunteers to really do that piece to tell voters the difference, right? Okay. The concern is, though, and I think Robert's point, that this is a foreign-based organization. This is for foreign policy ends. We see a lot of heat on the other side for folks being influenced, or even the intention of doing business with someone like China, for example. So the foreign involvement in our elections is concerning on multiple levels, but this in particular is a lot of money to pursue a certain type of foreign policy, and I think voters are wising up to it.
Absolutely. Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a great investment for AIPAC. You invest $100 million, and you get back $3 billion in tax money in return. I mean, you can't beat that kind of investment. But when you look at a state like Minnesota with the Muslim community, all that money won't mean anything, because they understand where their interest lies, and they're going to support those candidates that support them. We need to become that sophisticated in the Black community and the brown community, that money does not persuade us, because we understand where our interests lie. With all that money they put in media, with all that money they put in lobbying, you can still only buy one vote. And if that voter is sophisticated enough to understand where his interest lies, then that money has no impact on his decisions, because he understands what's behind the veil. He understands what a wizard is behind the veil. And that's really where we lack in many cases, is the lack of sophistication. And so, for example, many of the Black Caucus members just jumped on the Israeli bandwagon because their constituencies did not hold them accountable, because we didn't understand that our interest was not just in Israeli security, but it was also in equity and justice for the Palestinians and for the Christian community in Israel. And so we were more negotiable. Our ignorance made us more negotiable. We just need to become more sophisticated to understand what we're looking at and what's happening to us in this process.
I want you to call us at 773-763-9278, and let's talk about this. 773-763-9278. We saw this very, very, very clearly during the Jackson campaigns of 84 and 88. This same group, AIPAC and people from the right wing of the Jewish community had been coming for Reverend since he and Mrs. Jackson went to the Middle East in 79. And it reached almost fever pitch. Well, it never stopped. It never, ever stopped. But what Reverend had the advantage of was having been in the fields as an organizer for more than 20 years at that point. And so his voters stayed with him, even as this community came after him. The two times Reverend was interrupted, Dwight McKee, in his announcement speech. And you thought it was a Malcolm X moment, because these people, while Reverend is speaking at the beginning, they just jumped up, and they were from the Jewish Defense League. And the second person who jumped up, the crowd became angry and almost physically turned on him. And he just wanted to get them out. You have a right to say what you have to say, but you can't interrupt this. But I think of a Carolyn Kasdan. I think about Bob Borsage. our Jewish allies who came on the campaign, Carol and Kasdan in particular, we had no money. But because she is a progressive still, she just kept on going. And these people, many of them, they were put out of their synagogues. They were shunned at their synagogues. Their families turned away from them, all of that. So let's keep this in mind. I don't want you to conflate all Jewish people with this. You've got to be very, very careful. We need to be very clear on who AIPAC, who they are, and what it is they do, and whom they stand for. It's certainly not you. Okay, Attorney Daryl Jones, your thoughts?
You're absolutely right, Santita, on being certain that we understand who AIPAC is and what they represent, because there are many that are friends of the African American and the people of color.
And the progressive
with
community,
regards to our right,
and they have
absolutely.
a very real progressive tradition, and they were the ones who, it was Jeff Cohen and Fair who went after the New York Times because they said, you're not covering the Jackson campaign fairly. So I want people to be clear on that. But what do you make of this $100 million? I think Aaron has a point that this is meant to frighten people, but they are also cultivating people. I know some people that are cultivating to run against Jonathan right now. Congressman, I know it. I see it.
And both Aaron, I think, as well as Dwight McKee were right on point, because we have to recognize and appreciate that this is what the American political system is that a large part of it is money that's going into candidates that get elected. Usually the candidates, they sell their game, they sell their product, they tell to the voters, this is what I'm going to do. They get in, and then some of them become so focused on retaining the position rather than retaining the interest of the people. And that's where AIPAC comes in, because it gets to the point of saying, here's the money you're going to need to maintain your campaign. But we're going to need you to do something for us. We're going to need you to be on our side. We're going to need to be able to influence some of the decisions and votes that you make. And what happens from there is the question becomes, do the voters now continue to hold that elected official accountable? And I think that's where Dwight was going with that, is that it's important for the voters to understand that once we elect someone, we get them into position, if they start taking positions that are in opposite of our interests, then we've got to hold them accountable. This $100 million that's coming from AIPAC, it does a couple of things. One, it certainly influences the elected official to try to separate them from generally, if they've taken a position that was pro majority perhaps of their district on an issue, it separates them from that to say, we can build the issue. We will help you. We will give you the money. We'll have the commercials that air, the pieces that air, to be able to separate you and protect you, because you're now part of us and we need your vote. The other thing that it does, however, is it dissuades elected officials from going against AIPAC, because they realize that if they go against them, that they're going to have to face this behemoth of money and organization and structure that are going to come against them in a district that may have been safe if they would just be quiet or not take a position against AIPAC's interests. So the $100 million, in my estimation, really does mark a problem, and lifts up an issue that's part of our political system, and that is, will we as the voters be able to come forward and push on the issue that we have elected our officials to represent us on? So, it's a major issue. But I think it's a big thing with the voters. It's a big thing with education. And most voters don't read entire stories. They don't read the posts. They don't follow it as many of the wonks on our analysts do on your show. They're going to just get bits and pieces. And so they're going to think this person's good or this person's bad and not necessarily have everything else that's behind it. That's what I think is going on. That's the concern here. And that's why this $100 million from AIPAC is concerning in my estimation.
I want you to call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, the Santita Jackson Show, on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and WCPT, my home station here in Chicago, the largest progressive talk radio station in the country. Meet the morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show. But I have Nina Turner joining this panel, really to ask her about her experience as she ran. And this lobby came in on her with such velocity. And even with her stalwart supporter, Bernie Sanders, her candidacy, she was defeated at the polls with all that she did. And I mean, I like the person they represented that Cleveland ended up electing, but we'll talk about that, everybody, here on the Santita Show. Jackson Show. Just back in a minute. Hey, everybody, time for crosstalk. You all can talk. I'm just trying to do some other things. Why don't you? Robert Patillo, what are your thoughts about this? Robert, you there?
Well, I was struck by this. I was thinking about this while Errol was talking. But think about Senator Bob Menendez and everything he's accused of, working with the Egyptian government, and think about Eric Adams and the controversy around him and working with the Turkish government. But if you take the word Egypt out and replace it with Israel, or if you take the word Turkey out and replace it with Israel, it's no longer a controversy. If you said that Eric Adams' campaign was taking money from Israel, nobody would have any problem with that at all. It wouldn't even make the news. It's just par for the course. It's expected. Frankly, he will probably go up in the polls and get more support if that was the case. If Bob Menendez, instead of having gold bars and apparently being a covert agent for the Egyptian government, was a covert agent in the Senate for the Israeli government, they probably put him in charge of a committee. And we have to really look at what we're doing with our sovereignty as a nation. When we're saying that foreign countries, regardless of whether they're an ally or a foe, have the ability to elect senators and to elect congresspeople, and that effectively U.S. presidents cannot speak out against them. One of the last things President Obama did leaving office was send tens of billions of dollars to Israel. One of the first things Trump did when he came into office was send tens of billions of dollars to Israel. President Biden has seemed almost as if he cannot criticize Benjamin Netanyahu. Not that he can't criticize the policy, but literally the human being, Benjamin Netanyahu. We remember when President Obama was in office, Netanyahu walked into the White House like he owned it. He looked down on President Obama in his own house. And so we have to really look at what it would take to rebalance things. I don't think anyone is saying that we no longer support Israel, we're no longer allies, etc. But the Prime Minister of Israel, or essentially the dictator of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, should not be able to walk into the White House as if he has a key to the front door.
Just sent you a text.
The African American president, you come in the back door and then look down his nose at him the entire time. I think it's an important point to be made that if we're going to say it's corruption for the Egyptian government to own a U.S. senator, it should also be corruption for the Israeli government to own multiple U.S. senators.
Well, Robert. Robert.
No,
it's not just APEC. It's the whole mechanism of the Zionist system. Is that not only does APEC money come against you, the media interests that they control, the evangelical, white evangelical churches they control, the influence that a lot of them have on Baptist preachers because they take them all over there on the tour of the Holy Land and kind of buy them off. You run into a Kanye situation where and that's the real power that they have, that these interests have, is that it's just not APEC, it's just not the lobbyists. It's the whole mechanism they control come down on you that you're faced with. And that's what we have to learn both to counterbalance and to compete against, is and understand that it's a whole systematic approach to taking you out. It's just not the money they spend against your opponent.
No, it isn't.
You know what? Yeah, Dwight, I was actually thinking about the Kanye point while you were speaking earlier, because, I find it interesting that Snoop Dogg went around for 20 years walking black women on leashes, making them eat out of dog bowls, talking about shooting black folks and killing black folks and robbing black folks and harassing women and all the accusations against Dr. Dre, with Michelet and all the abuse he's done. And they're doing commercials for headphones and fireplaces and Corona and everything else. Kanye spoke out against his manager, who's from that community. Then we saw Rahm Emanuel's brother send out one tweet that declared Kanye crazy and ran him out of everything. They literally were throwing billions of dollars of his shoes away because he did something that egregious. And the fact that you can talk however you want around black women in media, you can talk however you want around about the black community in media, particularly when you're a mouthpiece, but they have made a point that nobody will be criticizing them in that way. Nobody will be casting aspersions on the communities. I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. I think we can learn from that and need to understand if we want to have true control over our communities and control our images, we have to be able to send out one tweet and then somebody go bankrupt the very next day.
Well, you know what? I think what needs to happen, we need to understand the political process, which we don't. Reverend Jackson often says we were in slavery longer than we have been free. And so there's a lot about power in politics that we have not understood. And I got it. That having been said, you have to look at AIPAC. You have to look at lobbyists from, who represent Chinese interests. And all these people are buying a piece of America. I mean, that's really what it is. And we need to have that discussion. And you need to recognize when people come for the people who represent you, they're not generally coming. They've been sent.
1 minute.
You need to understand that. You need to understand that. So everybody call us. Yes, Dwight. I've got about 30 seconds.
An example is what's happening right now with Elon Musk. Elon Musk made one statement they saw as contrary to their interest, and they put the whole power, made him an enemy of the state. And advertisers began to pull out of advertising on X. And that's why I said, boy,
30 seconds.
Community, his whole mechanism that come down on you, not just, a single entity. That's the real power that those groups have.
Call us at 866-594-HOPE, 866-59. No. Wow. 773-763-9278, 773-763, WCPT. Let's talk about
Stand by.
everybody. Thank you.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio in the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars over here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Meet them at the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. What do you think about this $100 million that AIPAC is going to use to target the squad and progressives, about a half a dozen of them? Not all progressive members, but it's interesting, those members who are persons of color. It's interesting. So I want to know what your thoughts are. What does this mean? And should organizations or entities, lobbyists who register, who really function on behalf of another country, should they register as agents of that country? See, I don't have a problem with, if this is the way, I don't have a problem with you advocating for whom you advocate, but you need to let people know where you're coming from. Is it America or is it another country? And that is what happened to Nina Turner. It almost happened to Summer Lee. It did happen to Reverend Jesse Jackson when he was running for president, and on and on and on. And we're now having a discussion out loud, Attorney Robert Patillo, that people whispered about for many, many years. You knew it. This was an article of faith, but now things have changed. So I want you to call us at 773-763-9278 and join Attorney Robert Patillo, Dwight McKee, Attorney Darrell Jones, Attorney Aaron Connolly. We're still trying to get Nina Turner, but I think there's a lot for you to chew on. Call us at 773-763-9278, and let's talk about this. Will your congressperson be primary? It looks like they just might be. You need to know when you mount a serious challenge. One moment, Dwight, because I have to go into headlines. Hold that thought. When you mount a serious challenge to an incumbent, something is behind that. Some big money is behind that because the power of the incumbency is quite powerful. It's huge. So, I want you to call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT in Chicago. 42 degrees will be the high. It is cloudy and rainy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 42 degrees, rain off and on, and clouds, everybody. In the NFL, the Eagles 21, Kansas City 17, the NBA, the Timberwolves 117, the Knicks 100. Bulls weren't so lucky last night. The Heat 118, the Bulls 100. There was an interesting group of children singing on an Israeli platform. They were singing, in another year, there will be nothing there, and we will safely return to our homes within a year. We will annihilate everyone, and we will return to plow our fields. They were speaking of Gaza, everybody. These are children. This advertisement has since been withdrawn, but wow. What do you think about that, everybody? Those of you who are traveling today for the holidays, please be careful, because there are 7 major storms all around the country that could imperil your travel. Please call before you fly, in particular, and follow the weather service as you drive. Please be careful, everybody. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Want to know what your thoughts are today about this particular issue. And of course, John Nichols will be joining us at the bottom of the hour to talk about Gaza. So call us at 773-763-9278. On this show, we have been really pushing for you to be financially empowered. And we've been working with Team Hochberg to that end. Great thing about Team Hochberg is that they have a credit card it's a secured credit card. And if you load it up and you pay the bill within the month, they can begin to raise your credit score. Call them at 855-59-DAVID, 899. 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. But now they have a way for you to own your own home, to purchase a home with just 1% down. It might sound crazy, but they have worked that out. But you need to call them at 855-56-DAVID to find out if you qualify for this program. Saving for a down payment has been the largest barrier between people and home ownership. 20% of $100,000 is a whole lot of money. And most people can't pull that anymore. Now they have this loan that will help all of our listeners to have a 1% down payment on their loan. They want to help you, your friends, your children, everybody be a part of this. And because the biggest asset that Americans have, well, it's their home. So it's a big financial investment that can pay off for you as time goes on. You can get loans if you have a home. You can get all kinds of privileges if you are a homeowner, everybody. And so do yourself a favor, call Team Hochberg to see if you qualify for this program in which you pay 1% down. Say the house is $100,000. Okay, 2. Instead of giving $40,000, you would then just give 2. Think about it. You need to call them and find out if you're eligible for this program. 855-56-DAVID. Dwight McKee, you were jumping in. You wanted to say something about this $100 million that AIPAC has set aside.
Yeah, I was going to say to Robert, I don't understand how you can be the ambassador to Japan and have dual citizenship and be in the Israeli army. Could you imagine if you were ambassador to Taiwan and also was in the Chinese army? I mean, this double standard is astounding to me when you really think about this thing. Rahm Emanuel is ambassador to Japan. but he also is an Israeli citizen and is also in the Israeli army. I could not imagine you being the ambassador to the Ukraine and being in the Russian army at the same time as an American citizen. Can you help me with that one, somebody?
Robert?
I don't think anyone can, or even when we see members of Congress. We saw Fetterman going up to Palestinian protesters calling for a ceasefire, waving an Israeli flag in their face. And if there's any other U.S. Senator waving a foreign nation flag walking out of the Capitol, it will be a complete uproar. Even an ally, even if it was a UK or a French flag, because we expect you to have the best interest of America at heart. And someone made this point the other day, and I'm stealing it, that Israel has more rights in Congress than Puerto Rico. And this is just a reality. These people are U.S. citizens. Folks in Guam have fewer rights than Israelis have in the U.S. Congress. And we really have to rebalance this system, and it comes with campaign finance reform, because as has been stated, when hundreds of millions of dollars are coming at you, when the media apparatus is coming at you, it's very difficult for a progressive grassroots candidate who's really funded by the community to stand up to just that barrage and deluge of just negative advertising, negative information, people going through your past, going through every part of your biography in order to bring you down. There's a reason that they maintain this level of power in U.S. politics, and it's a level of power that no other country has.
Well, how do you think Reverend Jackson survived this in his campaign? Because when I was talking to Nina Turner about what was happening to her campaign, I said, well, this is what Reverend went through. I mean, Bernie Sanders, who was one of only 2 white elected officials in the United States to endorse Reverend in 83, one of his Jewish sisters, not his literal sister, but one of his sisters within that family, because we're all one human family, everybody, slapped him in the face. It was almost like a punch. She called him a traitor. So what do you think about that? And should these lobbying entities, should they state whom they represent? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Your thoughts, Daryl. I mean, wow. I mean, this is not new, right? This is something that people whispered about, but now everybody wants to talk about it, Daryl.
Santita, I think that you're absolutely right that it should be a requirement that people know where money is coming from, that the voters know that this is funded by, X organization, this is funded by AIPAC, this is funded by whomever, and then to be able to try to ferret out some of what does it really mean? What does the candidate really stand for? Because you're influencing the voters, and ultimately, it's the voters that are making the decision. But the whole point here is that when you have foreign lobbyists coming to influence American politicians and policy, we've got to be certain that to the highest degree possible, that the American voters understand where the money is coming from for the people that are making the commercials, for the people that are making the statements, so they have an understanding of who it is that they're voting for or voting against. I mean, I think that's one of the basic tenets.
You have a caller
there. The situations are rare. I think that with Reverend Jackson, that he certainly was an exception to the rule in terms of having.
He survived.
He survived, and I think that with him, with that situation, what happens that he had such a great ability to reach the people individually, so that the commercials that were out there, it was broken, I think, because of his ability to reach the individual person and for the person to really consume who he was and to know that he was with them. That doesn't exist for many of the elected officials that are out there. They don't have the platform. They don't have what I don't know what the word necessarily is, but they don't necessarily reach all of these individuals and have them just really absorb the character of who they are and what they represent. And that's when they become very vulnerable to the money interests that are out there that are trying to paint them into the corner, to paint a negative picture of them, whether it's by commercial, by advertisements on Facebook or IG or whatever, all those things that are out there to paint that negative picture, they feel as though they can't overcome it on their own. The grassroots efforts of their campaigns are not strong enough. So, that's what I think is important, is that, we've got to be certain that we are able to identify, not simply identify those foreign lobbyists that are influencing American policies and politicians, but we've got to publish it. We've got to put it out there so that the voters know what's behind the candidate that they're voting for or voting against.
Let me go to Linear Bob. Linear Bob, what's on your mind today, sweetie?
Yeah, I want to second what we just heard, but I want to say there's another piece to it as well, and it has to do with the media. When Nina Turner was running in the primary in Cleveland, there were only two news organizations that I know of, both of which are web-based and small, independent. One is called Status Quo News, and I don't remember the name of the other one, but they were the only ones showing the advertising that was being run against Nina and how deceptive it was, and following the money and say, where did this advertising come from? They bought all the minutes in television. They bought all the minutes in radio. They bought billboards all over the place. They covered buses. I mean, it was everywhere you looked was negative stuff against Nina Turner. And why? Because she said the Palestinians were people. That's all she said, was Palestinians are people, and that brought AIPAC down like a ton of bricks. And no news organizations that I know of, other than these two little independent web-based things, even said anything about it.
You know what, everybody? We have been trying to reach Nina Turner. If we can't get her before the show is over, we will get her back on another time. She is pressed. But, I mean, I want to know what your thoughts are. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763. WCPT. I mean, how do you recognize these candidates, Robert Patillo, and then you, Aaron? How do you recognize these candidates? How do you even pose the question about who are you and where are you coming from? Because it costs a lot of money, number one, to get a congressional seat. You have to raise an enormous amount of money. And then once you get it, you have just a teeny bit of space. But then you look up and you have a candidate who comes out of nowhere with so much money, and you're like, now, who sent them? Not where'd they come from. Who sent them? Robert?
Well, this is not even a hypothetical. This is exactly what just happened with George Santos, where some guy just shows up out of nowhere with a BS biography and then hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't think we still figured out who financed his campaign when he was running. That he had something like $700,000 that just showed up in his primary account and just out of nowhere. And there's been no disclosure where they came from, who paid his bail money, those sorts of things. So it happens on a regular basis. And it's important as voters that we ask more questions and have forced them to think critically, because often these individuals are just given a list of talking points. They read off the talking points, and they make sure not to go against any of their corporate masters. One of my favorite questions is for the elected officials who are just dogged supporters of Israel. I just asked them, what exactly is the difference between Israel and reparations for African Americans? How can you support giving an aggrieved minority group financial assistance and land because of their historical discrimination, and not be in favor of giving a historically discriminated group economic and territorial rights because of their historical discrimination? There's no intellectually honest way to support Israel and be against reparations for African Americans. And I've asked that to probably a half dozen Congress people, and it's like you pour water on a cat. They start shorting out. They'll freeze up like Mitch McConnell. They'll disappear behind somebody because they have not actually been elected, or they're not actually candidates because they have a mastery of the issues. They have a great understanding of what it means to be an elected official. They have a strong policy position. they are a candidate because, as President Trump said this week, we have Manchurian candidates running who are only told what to think and what to say. They are more so actors in a marketing campaign of these groups. They go out and find people that fit the demographics they want in order to win a particular seat. They put money behind them. They write the talking points. They hire the consultants, and we as voters have the responsibility to vet them because the media apparatus is bought and paid for by the same people. This is why suddenly when somebody is supposed to be great, they show up on every single cable news show. They're on every podcast, every radio show, and then when somebody is bad, all of a sudden the media turns on them immediately as one group. It's almost a heel turn that a marching band would do, and just marches the other direction on them because they're all controlled by the same media apparatuses. So therefore, it's up to the voters themselves to ask these direct and ask these hard questions and advocate for people that they know and trust.
Well, I'm on their website now. They say we are more than 3 million pro-Israel Americans from every congressional district who are working to strengthen bipartisan support for the U.S.-Israeli in relationship. They continue. We encourage the U.S. government to enact specific policies that create a strong, enduring, and mutually beneficial relationship with our ally, Israel. And get this, they stand with those who stand with us. 98% of AIPAC-backed candidates won their general election races in 2022. 98%. Aaron, that is an astonishing figure. Is Aaron Connolly still there? She might not be. Well, Dwight, that's astonishing. 98%.
Again, it's what Robert just kind of laid out is that, again, you're dealing with a mechanism. You're dealing with an apparatus. You're just not dealing with, campaign finance. You're dealing with systems that come in and define you and redefine you, and define your candidate and redefine who they are. And ultimately, by the time that they control the narrative and control the perception of who you are and who your candidate is, you all have virtually no chance.
You have a caller.
Reverend Jackson had. The reason he was able to survive it is because he had about 20, 25 years in and had a grassroots direct relationship with a lot of his constituency. So they knew him from speaking in churches. They knew him from speaking in schools. They knew him from dealing with issues as they do, Reverend Sharpton and those ground root civil rights leaders. So some of them are able to survive it. But if you're somebody like Nina Turner, who's in process, then you have almost no chance when that apparatus jumps on you. Wow. And so the net impact is that they're going to more than often they are going to win.
Let me go to Robert, who has a comment. Robert, what's on your mind, hon?
How you doing?
It's great hearing your voice. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I wanted to happy Thanksgiving to you and everybody else. I wanted to comment on AIPAC because in the last month, I kind of tapped into discussion spaces on Twitter that were being organized by people in Palestine and in the Middle East. And over the last month, I have come to a realization that AIPAC is literally, if you want to talk about a deep state, that's what the deep state is. And why do I say that? Because AIPAC is directly a product of the Israeli military. Their total focus is to make sure funding flows to Israel, and it's been doing it since 1948. That's when it began, and people should begin to directly confront all of these Democratic politicians and demand how much money they're getting from AIPAC. I approached Brad Schneider. Usually when I send him an email, I get a response. He will not respond to that question. How much money do you get from AIPAC? And there's a lot of other Democrats that are out there. And if you want to wonder why nothing gets done in this country for our people, it's because AIPAC has absolutely monopolized the Congress and is getting them to focus on the biggest military proxy project in our history, and that's Israel. And the sooner we realize that, the sooner we realize there's billions of cubic feet of gas, natural gas underneath Gaza, we'll start to realize what this is really about. It's not about Hamas. It's not about any of these biblical stories. This is about land and resources, and that's all it's about. And it'll take time for you to dig through that, but I'm saying tap into some of these Arab journalists. They're intelligent people. They're well-read. They understand the United States better than most Americans do. I was shocked by this. Their clarity of thought about what is going on in the world is impressive.
Well,
get AIPAC out of this country.
Stay right there. Stay right there. I want you to talk to everybody during the crosstalk. I want you to call us at 773-763 WCPT 773-763-9278. I want to get your thoughts about this as we bring on John Nichols to talk about Brett Kassar. He is a Texas Democrat who is facing, he's got overwhelming support for a ceasefire, but he's been talking to his constituents and he's following them. He's representing their wishes. Tell me what your thoughts are about this, everybody. And happy birthday to Mildred Banks. Sending you much love, one of my morning stars. Everybody, please give us a love. I cannot type this in. I'm trying to wish you happy birthday online. Mildred, happy birthday, my sister. Love you, love you, love you, everybody. Kenneth, Chappelle already did it. Everybody, wish Mildred Banks a happy birthday. One of the Santita Jackson morning stars. Back in a minute. Oh. Whew, that's a whole lot. I'll get Nina on another day, but boy, oh boy, it just seems that the quiet part has been spoken out loud. It's a very interesting time in which we find ourselves. What do you think?
Well, I think it's amazing that for so many years, for decades, we've had this almost unspoken rule in America that nobody would speak on these issues, and that people were completely afraid that, as soon as you did, somebody would call you anti-Semitic. Then the walls of Jericho will come down around you, and next thing you know, you're working at Waffle House. And that's just a fear that's been instilled in the American political system, the American media landscape. I'm not going to say that Kanye was right on anything, but I will say that he tried to make a point about who pulls strings in media and in communities, and he was the one who kind of put his neck out there and said,
Mr. Nichols is on.
Forces that control the things that you hear. He said it in a very wrong and anti-Semitic way, but the fact that they were able to basically shut him up in the course of about 2 weeks kind of proved his point on what he was saying, and we need to hope people use that to understand that the same thing happens in our political system. We have people like Frederica Wilson out of Florida voting to censure Rashida Tlaib for what? And then you look in and she has $35,000 in campaign contributions directly from AIPAC. We start understanding the nature of our political system. When people are making votes that don't make sense, it probably makes dollars.
Aaron, I was trying to get you, but snafus with the phone.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having Bluetooth challenges this morning. My apologies.
No worries, I welcome John Nichols to the show. Hey, John.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Great. We've been talking about the $100 million that AIPAC has apparently set aside to challenge progressives. Aaron?
Yeah, and I think it's when we talk about districts who are supporting a ceasefire, right? Look at the numbers every day. We add representatives who are calling for a ceasefire to end this humanitarian disaster that the UN has been saying is going to happen from the beginning of this siege, right? This is not just a position that these representatives are taking for fun. This is the message that their constituents are saying. We see it reflected in polls. And I think the nuance of some of these races is going to be a little bit different, and there is a power to the incumbent status that many of these representatives have that AIPAC is coming for. So they're in a different position than they would be coming in an open race for an open seat in a primary. There is a power to being an incumbent that will make it harder for forces on the outside to bring someone new in. So I think that
Senator Turner just called in.
Okay. Well, you know what, John, would you bear with me? Senator Nina
Sure.
Turner just called in. We were talking about this, if you don't mind pivoting. But I want to talk. This congressman who you wrote about. I met
Yes,
him,
Greg
and
Casar.
I was so impressed with him. But I wanted Nina Turner to weigh in on this because this is a big deal, and they're going after AOC, Tlaib.
Well, you know that it's the
Yes.
same story, though, of course.
No,
because
you saw that with
Casar's
Reverend.
poll.
30 seconds.
Yeah. What's that?
You saw that with Reverend.
Yeah, but it's the same story as regards to polling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is Greg. What Greg did was poll, and found overwhelming support in his district. That's what the story was about. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Greg would be one of the targets.
10 seconds.
Because he's one of the initial supporters of the C-Star.
Stand by.
Senator Turner, you there?
I am, SJ. Good morning to you.
Love you, sweetie. Stand by, baby.
Change the world, change
Okay.
the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody. $100 million set aside by AIPAC to go after progressives. Interestingly, they're the progressives of color. Read into that what you will, but it's very, very interesting to see this happen. I want you to call us at 773-763-9278. Of course, John Nichols, you know, this is his segment. He's been kind enough to let us kind of blend these things in because we have former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner. You know we love Nina Turner, and you do too. One of the most popular political figures in America today. Of course, she hosts Unbossed with Nina Turner on the Young Turks TV network, and she's a senior fellow at the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy at the New School. Wow, what happened during your campaign?
Good morning, SJ, to your audience and to John and everyone. So great to be here with you. But this story, yeah, I'm having flashbacks. You know, I was just in D.C. Yesterday. I saw on Friday or Sunday night, as a matter of fact, I was with my dear Benjamin and Andy Shalal and some other folks and Brianna Joy Gray, who I know everybody knows, and she was asking, you know, SAT, how are you? Because she knows what I went through, as John and the rest of you know. And this is triggering to see that groups like AIPAC and Democratic Majority for Israel want to spend this kind of money on the squad members, and I'm going to do more. I'm going to do better. They're the Congress people are standing up for peace. That's who they are in this moment. It's not about them being a so-called squad. They are standing up for peace. They're standing up to save lives. And to see this happen to them, it was really triggering for me because these are the same forces that came into a Democratic primary in Ohio 11th District and decided which black person was going to be in charge. In the black community, we call that the HNIC. You know, who's going to be the head Negro in charge. They were able to decide that. And the reason why they're able to cloak their anti-blackness, because make no mistake, the majority of the candidates that they're going up against are candidates of color, and among them, the majority are African American. The reason why, it's particularly in the black community, needs to wake up and not let anybody, and I don't care who they are, dictate who our leaders are. We must stand up and decide who our leaders are going to be. But when they put up black against black, when they support one black person over another, then that gives them the opportunity to say, we're not anti-black. Oh, no, you are anti-black. And it is a problem. And the fact that they're doing this in our face, right up in our face. What other organizations do you know, can anybody name, right now in the United States of America, who advocate solely for a foreign entity get to decide who the various elected officials are in those communities? I want you to think about it. And why is it that they go so hard at the progressive candidates of color in particular, but it's progressive candidates. These are the same organizations that supported 106 Republicans that said that the 2020 election was rigged, did not believe that President Biden should have been seated. They support those kinds of candidates too. So we got to ask ourselves, though, why they're so virulent in the Black community. And another question for our SJ to ask, this is a family barbecue question, but we know we got other folks, our other sisters and brothers peering in. Why does the Black community sit idly by and allow it to happen?
Do we even realize that it's happening? I mean, members of the panel, Attorney Aaron Connolly and Attorney Robert Patillo, Dwight McKee, and Attorney Darrell Jones, we don't know who represents whom and who's lobbying for whom. And in this case, they are, in their mission statement, they say we are lobbying for the state of Israel. That's great, but I think you should register as a foreign agent and then say that. But 98% of the candidates they back win. Wow, Nina Turner. What happened in your campaign?
Yeah.
Like, just how did this manifest?
It's the force of money. It manifested because I was, asked. I interviewed with all press, and I was interviewed by Jewish press, and they asked me about, because in Congress, you got to deal with the foreign or international issues. Never had this problem when I was a state senator about, Israel and Palestine, or Israelis and Palestinians, and I said security for both peoples. And then they asked me about the boycott. And I hadn't truly formed a position on that. I'm thinking, hey, let's come together before folks start boycotting. The boycott divestment, movement is going on too. Now, understanding in our history, in Black history, boycotts were a tool, but I was trying to run my race, not even getting caught up in that. And I got to say, and I say, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I didn't know what hit me. I couldn't believe that I was in this mess, so to speak. I'm saying to myself, how did this happen to me? Because as a state senator, I had the largest number of the Jewish community in my Senate district. And I was just blown away that I was in this situation. All I said was justice and security for both peoples. And then I got a call from a prominent Jewish businessman who said to me that I was going there to be one of the squad. Now, this is it, sisters and brothers. I want you to think about this. Called me up and said, you want to be a member of the squad. You need to disavow the squad. And I'm thinking, well, Cori Bush is a friend of mine. Rashida Tlaib, colleague of mine. I'm just going down the list. Disavow. They decided they were going to overlay their dislike or disdain for the squad on me. This elder went on to say, we coming at you with everything we got. You will not win that congressional seat. Now, I want the Black community in particular, and anybody of good consciousness, do you believe that any force should have that kind of authority and power? Not the Democratic majority for Cleveland or for the United States or for Ohio, Democratic majority for Israel. And then after this happened to me, they went on to interview and rave about it. AIPAC money came in, DMFI money came in, Republican donor money came in to help my opponent. They had a red box on their website. I know John remembers this because people reported on it. Had it right in plain sight where the other campaign signaled to them because they couldn't contact them directly. You're not directly supposed to talk to a PAC, but indirectly signaled to them what they wanted them to do to me, meaning my opponent put on their website the things that they wanted to have happen to me, and they did that. So it's the culmination of that money. 4,000 Republicans crossed over in that primary. I want my sisters and brothers and family and friends to understand that in May of 2021, during the special election, I was 30 points ahead. They walked me down. They tore me down. And they utilized both the angry Black woman trope. Many of you may know I'm a chocolate sister. And it's especially when you're a chocolate sister that lays on you. And my opponent is of lighter skin. They pulled it all out. And so the question to the Black community is how long are we going to allow this kind of stuff to go on? And so to see that out in our face, they're saying flat out, we're coming after these elected officials because they stand for peace. We're coming after them because they want to make sure that there are conditions and that slaughter is not happening in the name of the American people. And they're really standing up for a ceasefire that, quite frankly, when you think about it, is good for both Palestinians and Israelis. Let's get the hostages back. Let's try to work to find a long-term peace so that both people can have self-determination. But SJ, that is why they came after me. With a bitch, I hadn't done anything, not uttered one anti-Semitic thing, not one. But they came at me because I would not disavow the squad. And also this businessman said to me that Palestinians had no right, that Israel had to recognize. And you know what? I wasn't willing to sell my soul.
John Nichols, we saw this in 84 and 88. I mean, and but Dwight McKee made the point very quickly, Dwight, before I bring John on. You made the point about comparing and contrasting what's happening to the Nina Turners and others with what happened with Reverend Jackson. You said he's been out in the field already more than 20 years, so his relationship with the black community
that's why he was able to.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I say he was able to survive it, as 4 or 5 other politicians who had a kind of track record with the black community, who had been, had enduring relationships, who the community knew because of their transparency and because of their commitment, so they knew him from the picket lines. They knew Reverend Jackson from the churches. They knew him from the educational issues he had taken. And so it gave him an advantage because he couldn't be that dramatically redefined by the new narrative that they put on you. Whereas Nina, I thought, with all of her track record and all of her history, didn't have a 25, 30-year track record at that level of visibility. And so she was more in process. And it gave them an advantage to redefine her and impose a narrative on her that she couldn't compete with because she didn't have at that point the history or the resources.
I mean, John,
and so that's the real disadvantage we have, huh?
No, I was gonna. I mean, I think your analysis is spot on. John Nichols, we're at an inflection point because this is the quiet part that's been whispered about, that's been uttered out loud, and now it's become a thing. So AOC's comments the other week about AIPAC make sense because they, of course, are knowing that they're about to be primaried. I mean, and big money is going to be behind them. How does one combat that? Nina Turner was 30 points ahead, but they were able to chip away at it. I mean, wow.
Well, let's begin with a couple of core concepts. First, money is powerful. Money is not definitional in politics. That's important to remember, and I think your father would remind us of this, that sometimes we think an overwhelming assault will necessarily defeat. It has the potential to defeat, and certainly if powered by money, it is a very serious thing. But there are ways to respond to this, and we were talking a moment ago off air about Greg Casar, the congressman from down in Austin, Texas, and San Antonio. He represents some of the most dynamic communities in America, and big cities with diverse populations, many religions, many backgrounds, and he was a very early supporter of the ceasefire. And he did an interesting thing. He commissioned a pollster for the Democratic National Committee and the Biden campaign, Celinda Lake, who's done all sorts of major polls. And he said, come into my district, ask about ceasefire, see what the level of support is. And what he found was, or what the poll found was, that people in the district liked Greg Casar. They said they were going to support him for re-election. But when they were told that he was a supporter of a ceasefire, 80% of them, 80% of Democrats, said they were more likely to vote for him. That's an important thing to understand. 80% said they were more likely to vote for him when they knew he was for a ceasefire. So the first thing is, don't run away from the issues that have made you, or that you're being attacked on, right? Lean into them. Understand you're being attacked because you've taken a popular stand, right? Mm-hmm. And there is a fear that if you are reelected on that popular stand, other less courageous officials will also take that stand. Now, what's notable right now, and what has to be really examined as regards all this AIPAC money, is what you're talking about, this notion that so many of the targeted individuals seem to be Black women. And this is something that Mark Pocan, a congressman from Wisconsin, who is also a supporter of the ceasefire, has pointed out. And he said, it's pretty notable that so much of this money is going against, a particular group of folks. Now, we now have more than 40 supporters in Congress of a ceasefire, including, we just yesterday got another U.S. Senator supporting ceasefire, Jeff Merkley. It is important to understand that the supporters of ceasefire in Congress are Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and even some who are not particularly religious. That they are Black, Hispanic, Arab American, Jewish American. You just run through the list, right? There is a diversity of folks who are supporting ceasefire. When AIPAC starts to come in with huge amounts of money, who does it come in after? Those questions ought to be asked. It ought to be a subject of debate. Again, it's something Mark Pocan, a congressman from Wisconsin, has raised quite often, and he's been attacked by AIPAC for that. AIPAC has gone after him on these issues. And so I think that the key on this is information, a lot of information, letting people know where you stand, being proud of where you stand, and also being clear on why these attacks are going on. And I think one of the most important things to recognize is that AIPAC speaks for the Netanyahu government per se. That not their politics, their ideology is in that camp, right? It is in that area. Israel is a much more diverse country ideologically. American Jews and Israeli Jews have many, many opinions, and it becomes vital to recognize that. If AIPAC is attacking someone, that doesn't mean that person is not a supporter of security for Israel and a supporter of fairness for the Palestinian people, right? It means the AIPAC attack is coming from a ideology, from a position that is narrow, right, within the whole perspective. And if we understand that and talk about that in a much clearer way, I think many of the attacks can be blunted. There could be a response. But the one thing I would remind folks of is when these folks came after Summer Lee in Pennsylvania, and she's certainly she's someone who's been a supporter of ceasefire and who may well be targeted, is likely to be. They didn't attack her for her stand on Israel and Palestine. They attacked her on other issues. They said she wasn't a good Democrat. She wasn't supportive enough of Joe Biden.
But hold that thought.
Yeah, but they said the same.
That's the thing to be conscious of.
Because because I think now the ground is shifted, so they're not going to attack her for that. And that's why I think this becomes even more challenging to acknowledge where these attacks are coming from. I mean, you were about to say, Nina Turner.
Yeah, just quickly, I wanted to say to what Brother John just said. That's what they attacked me on too, because the American, people in our district don't understand the Israeli-Palestinian, in a deep way. They like, we're not into this. But that's what they come in and attack you on other issues, and that's exactly what they attacked me on. Now, insularly within their community, the community of Zionist folks that believe that I wasn't sufficiently strong enough on Israel, they had their little meetings. I even have emails because I have Jewish allies, and I have allies that were in some of those meetings and sent me those emails. But I'm put that in the parking lot. But to John's point, and that's why educating people is so important, they came at me, and see, Summer Lee benefited because her race was right after mine, and they could see, in many ways, I was the sacrificial lamb. They even bragged about it in the paper, calling it the Ohio 11th strategy. They're using the same strategy. But John is spot on. They attacked me as not being sufficiently a good Democrat, that I didn't support President Biden. Many of you know I made that comment, half a bowl of excrement. Now with what's going on in the Middle East, I might go ahead and change that to the whole bowl, but I put that in the parking lot. But that's what they got me on, and then they And then they painted me as the angry black woman. And so those things resonated. Remember in 2020, trying to get rid of Trump. You want to send somebody like Nina Turner to Congress? She is not a good Democrat. She is going to mess with the president's agenda. We can't, that kind of thing. And then they use the trope. So John is absolutely right. That's how they come, because in most communities, the Israeli-Palestinian challenges does not resonate. That not being a good Democrat does. Being an angry black woman does. Not being sufficiently loyal to the Democratic Party and to the president does. That's how they got me.
Well,
externally. Now, internally, one more point I want to make. I want them. They sent emails all over the country. So even people, I remember when I got a call from one of my advisors saying Senator Turner Bankman-Fried, the one that's been charged and everything, is coming into this race. And I'm like, coming into this race? Why? I don't even know. First I said, well, who in the hell is he? Who is he? Never heard of him. He said, I'm going to try to call and try to get him out your race, but he's coming into your race.
But my question is, how do you not get got? Because when I shared with you as we were talking, when we were talking, I said, this is the blueprint was Reverend Jackson. Because that, I mean, the
ultimate blueprint, absolutely.
Well, because it was presidential, because he was the most prominent black spokesperson at the time, and he and Mrs. Jackson had gone to the Middle East. The question is, I mean, and John was very active in the campaign. He's one of our 1983 supporters, and he and I were both kids. How did Reverend? I mean, that was a long time ago. Dwight McKee made the point. Reverend's roots were so deep in the black community, and people had seen him literally every day. So he did not get got, although they tried. How do you not get got? Because they came after Jim Trafficant from Ohio, who's white. That's the good thing. They came after him. So while they're targeting black and brown people right now, they target people who don't hew to a particular line, a particular ideology. And I think we need to understand because they're not going to just come in as they're not going to talk about Israel now. They're going to talk about other issues. And John?
But one thing that Reverend Jackson did was to go and speak to people in the Jewish community, to go to a synagogue, I think up in New Hampshire, if I'm not mistaken, as some of the initial controversies raged, and he didn't run away from the topic. He spoke about it openly, honestly, I think, not angrily. He tried. He showed his whole self. And I do think that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get everybody's votes, but you will at least temper some of the criticism. And I think this is important in this circumstance, especially now, because what we know is that Jewish, Muslim, Christian members of Congress are supporting a ceasefire. It is something that polls show astronomical numbers of Americans support. And so
66%.
That's right. And even higher among young voters and even higher among Democrats. And so if you're in a primary situation, the critical thing here is to talk about these issues. And it will be different than in the past because this issue today is front and center. People are talking about it. And Nina Turner is right. In her race, Israel-Palestine was not the first issue. It wasn't one that everybody was focused on. Right now, and I think for a good period of time to come, it will be. And as a result, there is an opportunity to really talk about these issues and to do so and explain why you stand, where you stand, and what you stand for. And again, I'll come back to this example of Greg Casar, who did this polling and then has talked about it a lot in a lot of settings and said, look, now I can actually say what I am for. I am for a ceasefire. I am for making every effort to release the hostages who were taken by Hamas on October 7th. I am for seeking a peace process that will get us out of this circumstance so we don't see this anymore. And when you are able to talk about that and really put your stand forward, right, and not have it be obscured by ads attacking you for not being a good or something like that, but go to the heart of the matter. what you get to do is to condemn anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and to stand strong and say, look, there are many opinions about what should happen in Israel and Palestine. AIPAC has one opinion, right? And that is an opinion that, is similar to that of the Israeli government right now. But there are other opinions in Israel and in the United States within the Jewish community, and that as a candidate, you take a stand that is one that is supported by many American Jews and by at least some portion of Israeli Jews. And so you got to, I think it's possible to get beyond it. And I think we go back to the Reverend's lessons, right? Because the Reverend didn't run away from things. He talked about them. And he talked about them in healing and reconciling ways.
Yeah,
and I think that people, especially the black community, saw that.
Well, also without losing his manhood. The last minute I'm going to give to you, Nina Turner, do you think you'll run again? Because the ground is shifting.
I may, sis. A lot has changed in just 2 years. I mean, John is absolutely right about that. I did not have that luxury 2 years ago, but the light, because I did all of that. I talked to people. I went and I tried to push. Yeah. I did it. It didn't work in that case. But yeah, the grounds are shifting. So James Baldwin, once again, everything that's faced, we might not be able to change everything we're facing, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And so we got a lot to face right now.
Stay right here. I'm going to get closing thoughts, everybody. I got to dash out of here today, but I want to get closing thoughts from Rob Patillo, Aaron Conway, and Daryl Jones, and Dwight McKee. Very quickly, and you, and Nina Turner, to stay right here on the Santita Jackson YouTube channel. Thank you for a great show, Alex, and have a great Thanksgiving. I'll be back tomorrow, but I kind of wish I got one. Stay right there, everybody. I'm sorry I have to limit the comments today, everybody, but I have got to dash. But I wanted to get closing thoughts in less than a minute from everyone. Daryl Jones, are you there? Okay. Attorney Robert Patillo, are you there?
I am. My closed comments are, it was just announced during the show, there will be a 4 to 5 day pause in fighting, according to U.S. officials, that stands for dozens of hostages being released. So that is a positive development, and hopefully that can turn into a lasting ceasefire.
And let me see, Dwight McKee.
Well, most of that comes from the fact there's been such a rebellion against Biden, and Biden's campaign for president was at stake, and so people had to respond. He had to respond and force Netanyahu to respond to that. People are talking about a two-state solution. My question for that is, what happens to the Christians over in Israel who have as much longevity in Israel as the Muslims and the Jews? Is that the tourism is built around Helena sites over there, and both the Muslims and the Jews sell crosses. And so the two-state solution is not adequate. I think that there has to be a more pluralistic approach to this thing, as opposed to just dismissing the Christians like they have no standing there.
John, you still there? Or I know John is always having to leave. Well, Nina Turner? Your closing thoughts, sweetie.
Yeah, well, amen. Glad to have that good news. I do hope that this pause turns into something long-lasting, because when I hear pause, it makes me think of a boxing match, right? The boxers are in the ring, the bell rings, they boxing, rings again, the referee tells them to go back to their corners. Each person in their corner is being told by that corner, okay, stiffen up, hit them there, get them on the weak side, and then they go back to fighting again. So while I'm happy about the pause, we need something much bigger than a pause. We need to find a way to get a lasting peace. And really, the historic nature of this, many presidents have failed on this. The whole world has failed on this, because this has been brewing for decades. And that's the part that we need more people to wrap their minds around, that this didn't just start yesterday. It didn't just start on October the 7th. It's been going on for a very long time. And one of my greatest fears is that if we as a world do not solve this conundrum, with the United States being one of the leaders, we don't have to be the only one, but we fund this. It is our bombs over there blowing up Palestinians. Let's get what is done in our name should matter. If we do not collectively find a way to have self-determination and security and justice for both peoples, and I love what my brother said, don't leave out the Christians, for all the people over there, then our children and our grandchildren are going to have a moment like this again. See, this is a repeat performance. And the reason why it's repeat performance in terms of the violence and the level of hatred is because we collectively over the generations have not helped to resolve this matter. It is patently unfair and inhumane for the people of Palestine to live in an open air prison. It just is. It doesn't justify violence that Hamas did. It doesn't justify that at all. Immoral and against international law. Doesn't justify it at all. And the settlements are immoral. And killing Palestinians in the West Bank, wrong. And giving self-group punishment. So you understand, Sister, where I'm going with this. Unless we what happens over there happens over here.
Well,
so we have to find the fix.
Well, and it doesn't make you anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitic would also make you just like the other Semitic people, Arabs as well. Actually,
go ahead. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Say it again. People need to know Arab people are Semitic too.
So, and the thing is, as Congressman Jackson said when he was on CNN, he said, yes, of course, there's a special relationship between the United States and Israel. Therefore, when President Biden, who had just flown over there, this interview happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, he said, that's why it's important that he have the tough conversation with them. Because if you're really someone's friend, you let them know you're in a jam. And if you don't turn another way, you're going to feel it. And you can see many of their elected officials and prominent Jewish people getting on television, and they're shocked at the blowback. There's a lot going on here. Yeah. There's a lot going on here. But you know what? I think that they need to register as it needs to be understood for whom they advocate. And you need to say, I don't have a problem with the advocate. Black folks your advocates have been Dr. King. Okay, and your organizations, you need to support them so they don't have to get out here and beg somebody else whose agenda they might end up on. Support. If you cannot give them money, get in there and volunteer at the National Action Network or NAACP or Rainbow Push. Volunteer for the people who fight for you. That's what you do. And put that in your budget because you need an advocate. The people need advocates. You see the corporate interests and these nationalized interests have advocates. Now you support yourself. How about that? So I love you, and I hear those grandbabies in the background. I'm going. And here she looks like she's got teenagers, but black don't crack, although it will crease. I'm not mad at you, my sister. Mine is creasing.
Thank you, Sister MJ. Well, listen, we all aging, okay? Everybody aging. Everybody. Some people ahead of us and some people behind us.
Look, my father told me if you don't like birthdays, try missing one. I ain't mad.
I know.
Honey, I'm gonna go out here. I'm gonna go out looking like Diane Carroll, whatever she did. It works. I'm gonna try. I just hope I go out. I want to go out here in health and with a sound mind and with a clean servant's heart. All jokes aside, I want that to be the case. But I love you, Nina Turner, former state senator, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Congress. Amen.
Thank you.
Dwight McKee. Dwight McKee, you want to give her a word of encouragement before I get out of here?
Well, I'm always encouraged by Nina because she's a fighter and she don't let them. She gets knocked down, but she never gets knocked out, and she gets right back up and get right back in the ring and go toe to toe with them. And Nina knows that's going to be the story of your life because they don't quit either. Just like you don't quit, they don't quit either. So,
wait a minute. What did my brother say? Jesse said, former Congressman Jackson said of our mother who's like that, the Black woman in America. And now you share that title. Frightening.
And Nina trained for 12 rounds. Trained for 12 rounds.
That's right.
Yeah.
And don't stop. Don't stop. I mean, Congressman Gus Savage announced before he gave this speech supporting Palestinians on the floor of the Congress. He said, this speech, in all likelihood, is going to get me put out of this place. And he lost in the next election.
Wow.
But he was he was right. Look, all these other people who did this, it turns out history is absolving them. I ain't mad. You know what?
Right.
These things don't have to happen in my lifetime. I'm just glad God is on the throne, is going to make them happen anyway. Just give me a front row seat in heaven if I can get there, okay? How about that? I just want to see it. But yeah, because I want justice for everybody.
That? You're going to get there.
No, I'm going to try.
Yeah, we have to.
And, we want
and Brother Dwight, thank you so much, too. We got to have it. We have to have it for everybody. You just can't have it for yourself and have people left out, because there's just as insecurity as our justice and security, Absolutely. And so just in selfish ways, it's okay to be selfish sometimes, because we know the blowback will impact our children and our grandchildren if we don't get this right. So yes, I'm all about the global peace, and I'm also about securing a great life for my kids and my grandbabies too. And I think it's all right to say that and understand that there's a connection. Mm-hmm. Dr. King said what happens to one directly happens to us all indirectly. And is that a truism? Absolutely.
Now, you all, I love you, but Nita, you understand this. I got to
get
my hair done right now.
I know. Yes. Go ahead. Do that thing. Brother Dwight, love you. And sis, I'm coming into Chicago in January, so I'll call you.
Okay. I'm going to see you before then.
Okay, and I will call you too, Brother Dwight. I will call you.
Okay. Love you.
Okay. Sending love. Happy Thanksgiving.
Much love to you. Much love to you, Dwight, and the whole panel. Thank you, Alex. I love you all. I'm out of here. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.